The rotor wash hits the canopy 60 feet above you, and the whole jungle shudders like something alive just flinched. You're flat in the mud, chest against roots, breathing through your teeth, and the thermal imaging pod bolted to that helicopter's chin is scanning at 30 frames a second, painting everything warm in electric white. Your body is a 98.6-degree beacon in a 78-degree world. You have about 40 seconds before the orbit brings the sensor operator's sweep across your position. So, what do you actually do?
Here's something that most people never consider. In open terrain, desert, grassland, tundra, an aircraft looking for a human being on the ground holds nearly every advantage: speed, altitude, sensor technology, field of view. The math overwhelmingly favors the searcher. But in dense, triple canopy jungle, that equation doesn't just shift, it inverts. The jungle is, by a wide margin, the single hardest biome on Earth for aerial detection. And the person on the ground, if they understand a handful of principles, holds an asymmetric advantage that even modern sensor technology struggles to overcome. This isn't speculation. It's documented across decades of military evasion history, from the Burma campaign of 1944 to Vietnam-era long-range reconnaissance patrols to modern search and rescue operations in Borneo and the Amazon basin. Today, we're going to break down exactly why and exactly how a single human being can become functionally invisible beneath the jungle canopy, even when sophisticated technology is actively trying to find them. This is the tactical analysis. This is the thought experiment. And some of the physics involved will genuinely surprise you. Let's get into it.
Before you can evade anything, you need to understand what's actually looking for you, and more importantly, what it can and cannot see. Let's start with the biggest misconception. Most people imagine thermal imaging as this omniscient X-ray vision that sees through walls, through trees, through everything. It doesn't. FLIR, forward-looking infrared, detects surface temperature differentials. It reads the thermal radiation coming off the outermost surface in its line of sight. A closed jungle canopy is, for all practical purposes, a roof. A living, breathing, thermally complex roof. Modern FLIR systems, your Westcam MX series, your L3 MX15s, are extraordinary pieces of engineering. They can detect a temperature difference of less than 1/10 of a degree Fahrenheit. From altitude in open terrain, a human being lights up like a road flare. But beneath dense canopy, the sensor is reading the canopy itself, a shifting mosaic of sun-warmed leaves, transpiration cooling, and radiant heat. The person below is occluded. But here's the part that changes everything. FLIR isn't useless in jungle, it's dangerous at the margins. Gaps in the canopy, riverbanks, ridgetops where vegetation thins, trail junctions. Anywhere the overhead cover fractures, thermal becomes a lethal eye again. The search crews know this. Tactical flight officers, TFOs, are specifically trained to exploit canopy breaks. They orbit those gaps. They linger over rivers. They know that a moving human will eventually need to cross open ground, and they wait for that mistake. So the first rule of jungle evasion isn't about hiding. It's about understanding exactly where you're vulnerable and where you're not.
Triple canopy jungle is a term that gets thrown around loosely, but it describes something very specific and very important. It means 3 distinct layers of vegetation: emergent crown, main canopy, and understory, stacked vertically, each absorbing light, breaking up thermal signatures, and creating what amounts to a multi-layered concealment architecture that no human engineer has ever replicated. In true triple canopy environments, the kind you find in primary rainforests across equatorial Southeast Asia, the Congo Basin, and the Western Amazon, canopy closure can exceed 95%. At ground level, you're operating in deep shade, even at solar noon. From directly above, the forest floor is simply invisible in visual spectrum. And as we discussed, thermal is reading that dense, wet canopy, not you. Your job is to stay inside this fortress. That means understanding how to assess canopy density from below. Look straight up. If you see sky, a sensor can see you. Move under the thickest overhead cover. Follow the natural corridors that form between the buttress roots of large emergent trees where the canopy crowns overlap, and treat every gap, every tree fall, every stream corridor, every clearing as what historical seer doctrine would call a kill zone. This is where I want you to hold a thought. There's one specific type of canopy gap that most people would instinctively move toward, and it's the single most dangerous place you could be. I'll come back to that.
Let's talk about your body's IR signature and what actually works to suppress it. Your skin, your clothing, and your exhaled breath all radiate in the long-wave infrared band, 8 to 14 microns, which is exactly what FLIR is tuned to detect. In open air, you are a thermal bullseye. Under canopy, you're largely shielded, but largely isn't completely. And if you need to cross a gap or hold position in thin cover, you need to understand thermal management at a deeper level. What works? First, water immersion. Submerging your body in a stream or swamp drops your surface temperature to match the ambient water temperature almost immediately. This is not a movie myth. This is physics. Evaporative cooling continues working even after you leave the water, buying you minutes of reduced signature. Vietnam-era LRRP teams documented using stream beds not just for counter-tracking, but specifically for thermal management during helicopter overflights. Second, dense vegetation contact. Pressing your body against the ground, against root masses, against thick leaf litter, allows conductive heat transfer to dissipate your thermal output into the surrounding biomass. You're using the jungle itself as a heat sink. Third, time of day exploitation. In early afternoon, solar loading heats the canopy, the soil, and exposed surfaces to temperatures that approach or match body heat. The thermal contrast between you and your environment collapses. This is your window of lowest detectability. Now, what doesn't work? Smearing yourself with mud. I need to address this directly because a certain 1987 film with a future governor cemented this idea in the cultural imagination. Mud provides brief evaporative cooling. Brief. Within minutes, it equilibrates to your skin temperature, and you're radiating normally again, just dirtier. It is not a thermocloak. Space blankets are also misunderstood. A reflective mylar blanket can theoretically block IR radiation, but only if deployed correctly, reflective side facing your body with an air gap and no exposed edges. Draped over you like a poncho, it heats up from contact with your body and becomes a thermal signature of its own. The jungle floor and the canopy above remain your most reliable thermal countermeasures. And this is where most people would already be caught. Not because of technology, because of impatience.
Concealment means nothing if you move at the wrong time. Movement is the single greatest betrayal of a concealed position, not because aircraft see your body, but because they see the consequences of your body. Birds flushing from the canopy, monkeys alarm calling, a line of swaying vegetation that moves against the wind. The jungle is a living alarm system, and every animal in it has a disturbance radius, a sphere of disruption that radiates outward from your position as you move. A careful human walking through primary jungle creates a disturbance radius of approximately 30 to 50 meters. Birds go quiet in a wave ahead of you. Ground mammals scatter. To a trained aerial observer scanning the canopy, that wave is a moving arrow pointing directly at your position. So you manage your movement in 3 ways. First, the shadow clock. You map the aircraft's orbit pattern, move when it's farthest, 30 seconds of slow movement, then freeze, total stillness. Second, move low. Vertical motion shakes the canopy, horizontal motion doesn't. Third, never move in straight lines. Stagger your path, follow terrain, move like water. Evasion is not just about hiding. It's about feeding your pursuer a lie they want to believe. Counter-tracking is an art form that predates technology by millennia, and the jungle is the single best environment on Earth to practice it because the jungle itself obscures, distorts, and eventually erases evidence of your passage. The most effective deception principle documented in historical evasion accounts is the false commitment. You move deliberately toward a logical destination, a water source, a trail junction, a ridge saddle, leaving readable sign. Then you stop, carefully backtrack along your own footprints, stepping precisely in your existing tracks, and diverge at a hard angle into dense vegetation. The tracker follows the obvious trail forward. You've bought hours. Vietnam-era LRRP teams called this technique fish hooking, and it was employed routinely when teams suspected they were being followed. The variant they used involved moving into a stream. Walking upstream, water movement erases footprints in minutes on a sandy or gravel bed, and exiting on the rocky bank of the opposite side, yards from their entry point. Remember what I said about thermal and a specific type of canopy gap. This is why. Rivers and streams, the very corridors you'd instinctively move toward for water, for thermal management, for counter-tracking, are the primary focus of aerial search. They're canopy gaps, they're natural travel corridors, and they're where sensor operators concentrate their attention. You use water, you don't linger in it. You enter under overhanging vegetation, you exit under overhanging vegetation, and you never, ever walk along an exposed bank.
Evasion in jungle is ultimately a siege, and the jungle decides the terms. You need water, you need calories, and you need rest, all without breaking the concealment discipline that's keeping you alive. Water procurement without exposing yourself means exploiting the jungle's own hydrology. Vine water, epiphytic tank plants, bromeliads in the neotropics, pitcher plants in Southeast Asian montane forest, and rain catchment using broad leaves funneled into a container. You never approach a stream without first observing it from concealment for a full aircraft orbit cycle. Calories are secondary to water in the short term, but caloric triage matters. Insects, palm hearts, and certain fruits provide accessible calories without requiring fire. Fire being, obviously, an IR and visual signature that announces your position from remarkable distance. Your shelter is not a structure. It's a slight modification of existing terrain, a depression beneath a root buttress, a natural cavity insulated with leaf litter. You build nothing that didn't already look like it belonged there. And ultimately, if evasion is a means to an end, if you're evading to survive, not evading indefinitely, you choose when to signal, on your terms, when the tactical situation favors you, when you've identified rescue assets and confirmed identity. You control the ending.
Every technique we've discussed today, thermal management, canopy exploitation, movement discipline, deception, all of it rests on a single foundation: the willingness to be still. The patience to let an aircraft orbit 3 times before moving 30 feet. The discipline to lie in mud, in rain, in discomfort, and choose inaction when every instinct screams at you to run. The jungle will hide you. The technology has limits, but your own psychology is the variable that determines everything. The people who survive evasion scenarios, documented, historical, real, are not the fastest. They're not the strongest. They're the ones who mastered the most difficult survival skill there is: doing nothing, intelligently, for a very long time.